and they're doing a lot of these researches into whether or not native speakers and how people feel about them. But I've been listening a lot to Telma talking about English as a lingua franca, and to me the joy is that everybody has their own accents, you all have your own accents, so I know where you come from and you know. That's what I like about it. I like it sort of situates you within a nationality. It's very interesting as a native speaking English teacher. The one you were talking about, the pronunciation, students always want to do, but their best pronunciation is absolutely fine, but the one nationality that we cannot make any difference to the English of, can anybody guess what that might be?
I think it's Holland.
Not Holland, not the Dutch are very, very good, and the Danish are very good. You wouldn't know that they weren't British. It's not very near though, very near, a little bit south of Holland. A large country that traditionally we have a lot of disputes with.
France.
Yes,
of course.
the French, we can do nothing with those. They will always talk with this accent, you know. I know that the research that my students do, it's the pronunciation that comes out on top. So it's really interesting that you're getting the same sort of result there. But I don't think there is a need now anymore for the native speakers quite as much, and I don't think that we understand context. I think it's so much more important to have teachers who understand the place where they work. And I've done a lot of training of English teachers in the Middle East who are the nationals of the country who are going to teach their own nationals. And I think it's so much more important.
I do touch the idea more deeply about intelligibility and international intelligibility. However, we see that for students, this is a very important feature.
Absolutely, it is. But I think maybe it shouldn't be quite. It should be going down. Or the Japanese idea where they just have a native speaker for conversation class and nothing else. Students feel they're practicing, but then they have Japanese teachers to teach them. The rest of it is. I don't know. But just a couple of questions then. You talk about autobiographies. Now, I'm not sure about autobiographies because to me that's a big book. You know, so
yes, I was
life
going
history.
To at the beginning of our program, we had to write an autobiography with different features in it. One of the parts was how students feel about themselves as non-native speaking teachers, and that was the part I took out from the autobiography.
So that's why the autobiography.
Yes.
But is that a reference term? I'm just because I don't actually use autobiographies.
I'm not sure how to call it otherwise, because it's not an autobiography itself. What I'm using is just a part of.
It's a life history or a. Yes.
Yes, I was thinking
so just again, a lot of it comes down again to the terminology and what you're thinking of. Another question I had, graduates and undergraduates, you had different research methods with each of those. Why was that? Why were they different?
I'm in that situation right now, trying to figure out how to knit these things together.
Okay.
It was a situation where I have had already the part of the information about master students' perception on the issue, but it wasn't for me possible to ask the same from the undergraduate students. So I was trying to find a way to ask with another instrument, but then I arrived to the point where it's not easy.
Yes, you need to reduce your variables. Is it possible then to use the instrument that you use with the undergraduates with the postgraduates?
Yes.
Can you still because if you could reissue the same instrument to both, even if you only did it with one group, then at least you're reducing the variables and sort of helping them
in these days I haven't been thinking about other things than this, and I was trying to figure out what I'm doing with this. But yes, I thank you. I think that's a good idea. I haven't thought of it though.
It's just a suggestion. And just one final question, very quick. What's the implications of this research? How is it going to help the teaching and learning context?
I think that my main addition to the area is to take this into account for teachers and teachers' development. How I wanted to see how the undergraduate students and what their perceptions are with the graduate students. Well, so far it was hard to really.
So if they think it's the pronunciation seems
But
to be the biggest issue.
No, for master students, only one person mentions pronunciation, for example.
Yeah, so you've definitely got an area that's of interest and you need to address pronunciation. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. I have just maybe one question. You mentioned, yes, that you have the autobiographies, but then these autobiographies, originally, they were like for your research, right?
No.
They were already there.
Yes.
So you just used them for your research, okay? And then you have the questionnaires for the undergraduates. Were these questionnaires in your L1 or in the L2? Why?
If the question was applied in L2, because they are English, they are made
For the
for the
undergraduates.
English.
Okay. Do you think that it would be a factor in how they answer the question?
They had the freedom to write either in English or in Spanish.
Okay, you gave them a choice.
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any
And I had only two from 4 to 2 wrote in Spanish.
Okay, and did you see any difference in
No.
like the way?
There were grammatical issues, but it was totally understandable what their meaning and the original thought.
Okay, that is something that you need to mention in your methodology chapter because it's an important factor.
Yes, I do mention it that both studied and both become, that the master students are already English teachers and the undergraduate students soon will be English teachers, and that's where the...
Yeah, you need to make that distinction there. And also, another important factor is you. Because your thesis is about native, non-nativeness, non-ness, and you're talking about autobiography. So then in your thesis, I would expect to read a little bit more about you and your role in this research. Yeah, because you mentioned something that, for example, what are the main definitions of native, native, and then there is one auto or self-definition. Okay, how you define yourself as a native or a non-native and what are the factors that have to be.
Actually, my interest started from that moment when I was asked that question.
Yes. So then, somewhere there, you need to tell us more about you. I mean, like where your motivation came from for this particular research and the role that you play as a native or as a non-native. Because you have also, because as you mentioned before, you have those autobiographies, so also you have your own autobiography, right? So you need to include it somewhere there so that the reader knows more about you, where your interest came from.
I'm glad you're hearing that, definitely.
And then have you use that to approach your own research.
Okay. Yes.
And then all the comments that Amanda told you about these different instruments for the rather than the
Well, if you have any other ideas.
Yes.
I don't know if we have time, because I'm sorry I came late, but I was expecting you at 11 or something.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Somebody's missing.
yeah, okay, all right, sorry. So I guess my comments are just in terms of what you're gonna do next, and I hope that you will really pursue other research in the future, because I don't know exactly what your presentation was, I just caught the final part, but you mentioned autobiographies and questionnaires and studying perception, and it seems to me that the same thing yesterday I noticed that people studying perceptions normally don't use this kind of instrument like autobiographies or narratives. because perceptions usually take a more attitudinal scale, and people tend to use more objective,
Yes.
clear-cut statements, and people
Yeah.
respond to that perception. But I think that it's interesting in terms of this concept of non-native, native, etc. To try to look at this is part of a discourse, right, in our field. And these discourses are influenced by all sorts of things. So it would be interesting to see where are these discourses coming from. Because these people have these perceptions, because somehow they've been exposed to discourses that are reinforcing that. So it would be interesting to see where are they coming from. Because if we want to pull apart all this and say, okay, we don't have to go this way anymore. We can still learn English, speak English, use English, and not try to sound like a native speaker. And another concept is this idea that we can choose to be a native speaker. For me, it's quite strange, this idea. I can see that as an identity. I can say, oh, I have my proficiency is near native. But I can never say I am a native speaker if I wasn't born in a place where so the adoption of this identity is an interesting thing in itself, because you cannot be a native speaker. So you can, the best you can do is try to be a near native, and that's why the tests rubrics say, okay, is this candidate a near native? Does this person have a near native proficiency? So it's not something that we should be aiming at. But this tests is another part of the discourses, is tests teachers themselves and materials and society in general, the way private sectors or people in the business promote this idea. And the fact is that the majority of English teachers in the world today are the so-called non-native speakers. These are bilingual speakers, and the most important thing would be, are they proficient users of English? Not if they're native or non-native, because this is...
Well, the
this
context,
is
for example, where I work, it
it's-
still follows whether you're native or non-native.
Yeah,
It doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't even matter whether.
It's ridiculous.
But it's a label, and it's interesting to unpack what is behind this label.
Of course.
Why are
And because of the label, people, at least my personal perception is that this is, because of the label, we try to get that native-like pronunciation, to be able to remove that label, at least on a certain level.
And I mean, that is completely fair enough, because when I speak French and Italian, nowhere near as well as you all do who are doing master's studies in a language which is not your own, and probably speak 2-3 languages, and that's why I like the non-native accent, because it shows that you are a very skilled person and you have got many languages, whereas I only have one or two. But I want, when they say, when I go to Spain, or sorry, not Spain, France, I want to speak like a French person. And nothing gave me more pleasure than when I went to Paris and people were coming and asking me in French, oh, and then I tell them and they keep talking, going, oh. But so it is very important, I agree, but I don't think it's a goal you should aspire to. I think you should be proud of what you can do, because you do so much more. All I'm doing is using my own language to work with, and even now in British universities, for native speakers it's difficult for us to get jobs in universities, because they would rather have non-native TEFL professionals, because you have all the other languages and the experiences that perhaps I don't.
Of course, because if we ask anyone, I guess nobody is ashamed of who he or she
Yes,
is.
they're all amazing, they're all amazing.
Can I say something briefly? I really, I was very surprised when you decided this topic, Indico, because it has been a strong discussion about whether we should be using these terms. Most of the scholars have agreed that there is no sense to continue distinguishing the label teachers like this. And I'm glad that you take this topic, but I do agree with Thelma and Amanda and with Iracema, so that you should, I see that you should strengthen your argument, why you want,
My personal perception.
exactly, to find out perceptions when there is this big discussion about
I
we
wasn't
should.
aware that I can do that.
Yes.
Otherwise, I've definitely.
Yes,
We
this
have
is
placed
something
my
that
personal-
will make your study more relevant, you know, and see why
Actually,
is
mine
this
was the
decision.
longest, I think,
Yeah.
description of my own. And how I
Exactly,
see
and your
myself as a
position,
non-teacher.
your voice, it's very important there. And also, I see a space, a possibility for narrative study. Why? If you're using autobiography, and that biography includes just an entry of non-natives, why not, with the information from the questionnaire, going back with those participants and ask them, what you know, now how they change, whether their views change, you know, from when these students wrote the autobiography, who was 2 years ago, whether the master's program has had an impact in your view.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
have
in the
that,
master-
and I have that in plan. But
Exactly,
then-
and that would be a narrative study.
Exactly.
Because you go back to the narrative, from their focus group with the number, you know, with these students, and find out, because as far as I remember, there is not much to say, and that probably the teachers were not aware of that issue, and now they are, or they are in the same position. I think that I will contribute a little more in
Among
your
my
study.
goals, definitely, that was definitely in there, but, well, then among my
That's
guides,
it.
among
The idea is-
my guides, they decided in a way, well, they suggested to look at that was my only goal, honestly. But then I was suggested to look at the issue from the undergraduate
No,
students'
that's good.
perceptions too.
That's
But
right.
then
That's
took me
right.
to different instrumental plays that I now have to look
Right,
around what I'm doing.
that's the tricky bit, so you either move your focus, collect more data, but don't use it, or you can just do everything while you're thinking. Let's imagine that I do that, then how could I still combine my findings with both participants? You could, what you could undo it.
Discard them and then just focus on the
Right.
postgrad.
Or the relevant issues,
Raise your attention from the questionnaire and from the original autobiography, you know, take those issues.
Is it not
Just start
necessary
dialogue.
to combine like both findings
You can compare.
to
and
knit
compare,
it absolutely together?
You need to relate them to each other, they don't have to be combined. You can look at the way they're doing it, but what you do need, if you are using undergraduates and postgraduates, you need to use the same instrument with both, really, in an ideal world, to reduce the variability.
And that could inform very, very nicely the programs, you know, the programs, the curriculum.
Yes, that was my only and main goal at the beginning with my idea, but then other ideas emerged, and this is where
As if you need to combine them, because you're talking about the same person is going to give
The same context.
No, what I mean, the undergraduate.
No,
And
no,
the-
no. I don't think there is conflict in that.
I still cannot see what.
Because the context of the BA is what?
Yes.
The context of the MA is what?
Yeah,
So
same context.
the tendency that the students from the BA go to the master's program. So you can make a connection to inform the curriculum. That might be, well, the students' perceptions at this level have this idea, this perception, these positions, or probably they were not aware about it. Or, I don't know. I think that.
Go with your instinct. Yeah, whatever you think, whatever you feel about it, because you are becoming the expert on this context. So you are now the person who needs to make the decisions, but as long as you can justify why you made those decisions.
Okay. Thank you very much.